Alright, while we're talking about decimals, we want to look at two types of decimal that we have. We have what we call terminating decimals. Now with terminating decimals, we're saying that these are decimals that can be expressed exactly. So they can be expressed exactly. For example, if you have a decimal like 0,06, it's a terminating decimal. If you have a decimal like 0.296, it's another terminating decimal. As long as the decimal can be expressed exactly and is not rounded in any way, then it's a terminating decimal. Alright, but we also have other decimals that we call non-terminating decimal, and on the contrary, these ones cannot be expressed exactly. You see, so whenever you are writing these decimals, you are trying to round them off to a specific number of significant figures or decimal places, because you cannot express them in exact form. I want you to look at this fraction like 12/13 as a decimal. Then this will give us 0.923076923, and it's not all, it continues to go like that. It's non-terminating, it goes to infinity. So such a decimal like this one is a non-terminating decimal. It doesn't terminate, it continues to extend unto infinity. And if you're using your calculator, then since your calculator has a fixed number of digits that it can display, it will end somewhere, say here on 3, but that doesn't mean that the decimal has terminated. It will continue to go unto infinity. So we call such decimals non-terminating decimals. We also have a fraction like 2/3, which is 0.66666 going on like that. Alright, that's another terminating decimal. So a non-terminating decimal, it continues to go unto infinity, but you can see here that it has a recurring pattern of 6. So we call that a recurring decimal. We call such decimals recurring decimals, like this, like 2/3. So when we are writing a recurring decimal, we can write it like this. It's equal to 0.6 with a dot on top of the 6, and that dot on top of the 6 tells us that this recurring decimal repeats its the 6 will be repeating itself. So it goes like 0.66666 going on like that, and 6 is the repeating digit right there. So we call such decimals non-terminating decimals, and specifically this one is called a recurring decimal. So if you have another decimal which is like, for example, let's say you have a decimal which has a pattern 0.484848, and it continues to go, it's a non-terminating decimal, then you can simply write it as 0.48. Okay, let's have some space a little bit. Right, so you can write it as 0.48 with 2 dots here to show that the 48 part is recurring, it's repeating itself in the decimal. Alright, so enough with that. Now what I want you to understand is that when we are dealing with non-terminating decimals, since we cannot express them exactly, then we have to be rounding them to a specific number of significant figures or decimal places. So what we're saying here is non-terminating decimals can be expressed, and number one, correct to a specified number of significant figures, and number two, correct to a number of decimal places. So this is what we're going to be doing in the next video. We're going to be looking at how we can correct a given non-terminating decimal to a specific number of significant figures or decimal places.